Weekend Project.
Hello, fellow wood chopperoos. The Big Chopperoo and Safety Dan. Hey, where are you?
Just cleaning out my desk, man, getting ready to go.
What are you talking about?
Well, that last video said that you should get rid of me.
Didn't you read the comments on the computer?
What, that Commodore 64 thing?
Hey, look, never mind. Don't worry about it. Everyone loves you. You're here to stay, so go ahead and put that away.
All right.
And on today's episode, we're going to show you how to make these Inlay Dovetails. Originally, I made this practice piece by hand and posted it on Facebook. Now, to do this by hand is different than how I normally do my dovetails. However, on this larger piece, you could do it by hand, but I use the bandsaw to help speed up the process.
Did you say bandsaw? You better make sure you're wearing your hearing protection and safety glasses. And that goes for you, too.
I'm beginning with material that is 3/4 inch thick. But I need to make a mark 5/8 on the face of the board. I could use my marking gauge, but I don't want to leave that scratch line on my finished piece. I laid out the tails first, and the spacing looks odd, but it's really important. Now the tail width is 5/8, and the distance between the tails is 7/8. Now I could do this by hand, but to help speed up the process, I'm doing it on the bandsaw. The contrasting wood is basswood, and I measured 3/4 inch and made a mark. This is 1/8 inch longer than the tails. I'm using a scrap piece of wood that's the same thickness as the basswood, and I'm laying the tails on top. Make sure you have no gap between the tail piece and the contrasting board. Then trace the tails. And once again, I'll cut them out on the bandsaw, or you could do it by hand. I could have cut the waste completely out on the bandsaw, but I wanted to show you how I could do it by hand. I start by making a relief cut with my knife. Then I chisel down and remove some waste, about halfway. Then I flip it over and do the same thing. Apply glue to both pieces. Now when you fit them together, they must be a snug fit with no gaps. Set it aside and let this dry. Note you can still see my 3/4 inch line on that contrasting board. Once it's dry, cut the contrasting board on the waist side of the line. Now on every side of the tails, measure 1/8 of an inch. Connect your lines and remove the waist. Once again, I'm going to use the bandsaw. Basswood is really soft. I don't want to chisel out the waist because, well, I don't want to damage that contrasting piece. So I will use a coping saw with a spiral cut blade. With a razor sharp chisel, I'll then clean up the insides.
Okay, now I'm going to focus on the board that's going to have the pins.
I measured 3/4 of an inch on the face grain and 5/8 of an inch on the end grain. I have to make an 1/8 inch deep rabbet here. This rabbet will help conceal the inlay on the inside of the final piece. Once again, here's those measurements. I'll create a trench with my knife. This will help guide the shoulder plane. I start with the plane tilted in the trench, and then I level it out. I'm going to trace for the pins. It's important to keep the rabbet facing away from me. Carefully place the tails on top and trace around them. I also like to shade in the waist area that's going to be removed. You might be able to make a jig that would cut this out on the bandsaw, but I'm going to do it by hand. Then it's back to chiseling out the waist. With it all chiseled out, it's time to add the glue and put it together. The last thing is, I add some boiled linseed oil and turpentine to bring out the natural beauty.
Well, there you have it. With some practice, you too can make this beautiful inlay dovetail pattern. Safety, hey, why don't you just go ahead and unpack your stuff?
Okay.
What is this? I mean, it's just garbage.
Hey, man, there's a lot of good times here.
Good times? Yeah, well, can you remember any of them? Well, if you like what you saw today, subscribe to us on YouTube.
Or you can join us on Facebook and Twitter.
And don't forget about our blog. Well, there's one more thing that I gotta do.
Chad, I think it's time for you to dance.
Oh, yeah.
Funding for this program provided by
Dan? Hey, Safety Dan, where are you?
Just cleaning out my things, man.
Well, what are you talking about?
I don't know.
Well, what are you talking about? My hand, but I use the bandsaw to help speed me up the process. Well, there you have it. I forget when I say there you have it. With some practice, you
Shit, I can't.